Hello, everyone. This is Bethelite, and contrary to popular opinion, being spiritual and being a Bethelite are not necessarily one and the same thing. Of course, you have sisters, women in the organization, who, if a Bethelite comes up to them and says, well, hey, my name is such and such, and I'm a Bethelite, immediately that person generally is on that sister's radar as a potential marriage partner because you automatically assume, oh, that person is awesome, that person is spiritual, and that person would make the perfect husband. Of course, you look throughout Bethel and you see gorgeous women, beautiful women. And again, it's part of the reason is because these are Bethelites and these are supposed to be above par in comparison to other men. And really what you have is a pattern where oftentimes the spiritual people are weeded out, and what you have left are people who aren't spiritual at all. I'll give you an example. One of my assignments was in the food warehouse. Now, if you're driving down the road by Wallkill, you have on your right side, let's say on your right side is the facility, the main facility. You're going to see this big area where the e-residence is, where the library is, and you have those huge windows over to your right as you're driving by. Well, over to your left across the street is the food warehouse. The left of it is the root cellar, and then on the right of the food warehouse down the road is the slaughterhouse. Well, I worked in all those buildings, but at this time I was working in the food warehouse, and there was, to start off, about 5 of us in the crew in the warehouse. Now, you had other crews there working in that building, but to start off, there were 5 of us. And one of the guys there was maybe only there 3 months or so prior to me getting there. So we both had our Bible reading to do. Now, every new Bethelite has got to go through from Genesis all the way through the entire Bible. Well, this particular person had been there prior to me getting there, but I was ahead of him in my Bible reading. And it's a requirement. Now, this particular person, I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to try not to say his name. Wasn't the spiritual type of a person. He flat out said that he didn't want to be there. He was there because of his parents. His parents, I guess, were big shots in their congregation. So, of course, he gets appointed. Of course, they make him pioneer, and now he's at Bethel and doesn't even want to be there. But get this. He's probably one of the more popular people on the crew. He's probably one of the more popular people in the entire warehouse. How is it possible that someone that would not have anything in common spiritually with a spiritual person, a person who takes spiritual matters seriously, who has their spirituality as their top priority, how is a person who is not that way one of the more popular people in the whole warehouse? Everybody likes him because he's like them. They have that in common. I'll give you an example. I went to East Poughkeepsie congregation, and East Poughkeepsie was located neutral in between Walk and Patterson. They're both Bethel, but they're different facilities. There's Brooklyn, Walk and Patterson. So East Poughkeepsie, my congregation, was located neutral between Walk and Patterson. So people that went to the Gilead School at Patterson were assigned to my congregation. Now keep in mind, I'm a new Bethelite, and wow, I'm actually in a congregation with Gilead students at Bethel. I'm like starstruck. So what do you think I talked about all day in my assignment? Gilead. And talking to other Bethelites and saying, wow, what would it be like to actually serve at Bethel, have that experience, and apply to Gilead? Hey, have you ever thought of going to Gilead? What would that be like? Is it possible someone could go to Gilead and MTS? Is it the same? Is the training in MTS the same? I'm going on and on about all these things that I thought were spiritual and things that excited me, and nobody wanted to talk about that. I kid you not. They were getting upset. They would literally, my overseer pulled me aside and he said, you know, other guys on the crew are getting upset because it makes it sound like you feel like you're better than other people. And I'm like, well, what did I say that made me come across as haughty? I'm asking people questions of what they think about different avenues of service. And he says, well, people don't want to talk about that all the time. He really finally just got to the point. People don't really want to talk about that all the time. By all the time, he really meant at all. They don't want to talk about that at all. They want to talk about girls. When I say you don't have to be spiritual to be at Bethel, you have the other people on the crew talking about girls, using profanity, as long as you can do the work. As long as you can do the work and you fit in with some kind of clique somewhere where people liked you, you were way better off than a spiritual person who more than likely is going to bump heads with other people. So can you imagine me just awestruck and just so appreciative of spiritual things and talking about where I was in the yearbook, in my yearbook reading, as me and the rest of the crew in the warehouse are going through, and this is again the food warehouse, so we're preparing pallets that were going to be sent out to all the different facilities. Could you imagine them wanting to talk about girls, wanting to talk about gossip, wanting to talk about who did this and who did what? And this is the question, one of the questions I got while we're going down through the warehouse, getting the different items and piling and stacking them up on the pallets. One of the guys were like, if you had to, one of the guys on my crew, they said, if you had to choose, you were forced to choose, and you had to sleep with another man at Bethel, who would it be? And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, at what point during the course of the day, going through morning worship and preparing for your meetings and doing your personal study and preparing for field service, at what point during the day do thoughts like this enter your mind? And why do you feel like this is appropriate for discussion? I kid you not. One of the members of the crew went off. They start walking towards me and they yell, "Who are you to tell anyone what is and what is not appropriate. I'm thinking that's kind of common sense, that you're not in a religious facility talking about if you had to pick a man to have sex with, who would it be? We're not going to get into, because I could talk to you a little bit about homosexuality and how people kind of direct conversations toward that to figure out where you stand with regards to homosexuality. Well, this is not the point. The point is, this is the environment. The same person that went off on me talking about how can I say what is and what isn't appropriate is the same person that didn't even want to be there, who's only there because of their parents, and was so far behind on his Bible reading that our crew overseer, keep in mind, our crew overseer loved him. Everybody loved him. I didn't dislike him as a person at all. It's just we wouldn't have had very much in common as far as conversation is concerned. What guy would you sleep with in all of Bethel is just not something that I would want to. Not that he said it, someone else did. The same guy that went off on me about just some basic common sense things that were not appropriate to talk about at work anywhere, let alone at Bethel, he was so far behind on his Bible reading because he didn't want to do it, that our overseer used work time that we're supposed to be working, for him to sit and do his Bible reading. So everyone else is working, and he is on the side, sitting down with his Bible, doing his Bible reading. That's favoritism, basically, because you're not supposed to do that during work time, but an overseer like him. This guy's walking around, of course, with his Bible. And he is literally, keep in mind at that time, I'm about as naive a person, and I am, so to say, drinking the Kool-Aid. So I was fully vested in the organization. He is walking around with his Bible open, going to members of the crew saying, how do we know that there is even a God? And he's basing this off of his Bible reading, which he's probably the first time this guy's ever sat down and read the Bible. He's probably about 19-year-old kid that could care less about, religion or religious things. So it's probably the first time he's ever read the Bible, other than out of a watchtower or something like that. He's reading Genesis 6:3, and he comes up and he even came to me and said, how do you know that there's a God? Look at this. And he reads Genesis 6:3, where it talks about the Spirit of God not continuing with man, and the lifespan being 120 years. And he says, now, when do you recall reading anywhere outside of this book where people in general are all living to be 120? He said, as a matter of fact, and then he looks at Genesis 9 and verse 29, I believe, and talks about, well, here Noah lived to be 950 years. Where do you recall anywhere in history where people were living to be 1,000 years of age, and then all of a sudden it gets cut to 120 years? That would have been written about all over the known world. Where do you see that in a society outside of what we have written here? And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, I thought he was joking. I honestly thought he was joking. I was so naive at the time. I honestly thought that he was joking. But no, he was serious. So you have a person freely walking around. Now, you can't necessarily do this at the Kingdom Hall. You cannot do this at the Kingdom Hall. But at Bethel, you can do it. because spirituality is nothing to do. Nothing to do. You have people there because of their skills. You have a person walking around freely talking to people on the crew openly about he didn't believe there's a God. And this is a guy at Bethel that everybody liked. The only reason I believe he left is because wanting to date and probably marry a girl. If it weren't for that, they'd loved him. He'd still be there. Somebody didn't even believe in God. Bethel has a lot more to do with the organization needs not just free labor, but skilled free labor. They need people that can actually get a lot of work done in a short period of time. So they look more at your health, how much work you can do, and they don't like issues. So as long as you're getting along with everyone and they don't have to hear about issues, you're fine. You don't have to be spiritual at all. There's tons of people at Bethel that aren't spiritual at all, but they know how to turn it on in the congregation. They know how to turn it on in the congregation. In the car with the brother that we're going to my congregation in East Poughkeepsie. It's a nice drive. We're in the car talking about all kinds of different things, listening to music, and we get to the Kingdom Hall, and the brother is like, showtime. He literally said, okay, it's showtime, and he transforms and is in the hall shaking everyone's hand, grabbing microphones, getting them ready. It's a show to a lot of them. They learn that at Bethel. You think people go to Bethel to learn to be spiritual? No, oftentimes, probably more times than not, it is the opposite. If you're not already spiritual before you get there, you're probably not going to become spiritual after you go. Also, too, you could send someone that's very spiritual to Bethel, and they could, because of their association, become very much the opposite, not spiritual at all. Your association. Who else are you going to associate with? Let's say you're at Walk Hill, where I was. I'm not at Brooklyn. I'm not in the middle of a city. Walk Hill is an area where the organization pretty much owned everything around Walk Hill. The whole area was rural. You're around just people there. You don't have anybody else to associate with. So if you're with a group of younger people, primarily when you first get to Bethel, you associate with the other people that got there with you, because those are the people that are going to the little meetings that you have to go to and the little classes that you have to go to. Those are the people there in your group. So those are the people you get to know. If they're not spiritual and your crew's not spiritual, you're not around spiritual people most of the time. Now, let's also talk about the sisters. I'm just telling you how it is. This is not opinion. This is how it is. You go to Bethel and look at the women there. You have beautiful women, gorgeous women. The people that are able to marry these women are often people who have certain skills that Bethel needs. Not because they're spiritual, skills. And Bethel doesn't want to have to start all over and train someone else. So that person applies. If you want to get married, you have to reapply again as a couple. You're either accepted or you have to leave Bethel and get married somewhere else, however that works, with someone who doesn't have any money. So the people that are getting married tend to be the people with certain skills that they need, not spiritual people, people with skills that they need. And who are they marrying? The most beautiful women that they see, not necessarily spiritual women, the most beautiful women that they find. So you have all these people there that aren't spiritual, but they can put on a show. They can definitely put on a show. And just briefly, you have a lot of women that come to Bethel through marriage, and they are housekeepers. One of the trainings that you have when you first get to Bethel is you spend a day with the housekeepers. You spend time with the housekeepers. They show you what they do. They teach you how to make the bed. You already know how to make a bed, but they want you to make it a specific type of way. And while I was with this housekeeper, showing me how she goes and cleans the rooms and things like that, you had other housekeepers coming from other areas into her area and talking about whatever else. So if you can imagine housekeepers having assigned areas, not being in those areas, being huddled up and grouped up in different areas, chatting and talking and gossiping and goofing around. I'm not saying everyone does that. I'm saying I saw it while I was with the housekeeper. So she's having me make the bed 8 million different times, and while I'm doing that, she's chatting away with her friends who are assigned a whole nother area in the facility. They're not even know where they're supposed to be. This is how you end up with people who aren't even spiritual at Bethel. Bethel's looking for certain types of people, people with skills, and people who get along with those people who have skills. Not spiritual people, and people who get along with spiritual people. If it comes to these brothers are talking about inappropriate things and they don't even believe in God, and these people over here are very spiritual and very appreciative of everything that organization prints, they're going to side with whoever is the better worker. Not whoever is the more spiritual person. And then when those people get married, they're going to pick someone like them. They're not going to go find the most spiritual woman. They're going to find the best looking woman, who oftentimes is not going to be spiritual at all. And then, after seeing all of this, and I haven't even told you a fraction of what all I saw, I get back to my congregation after having been told to leave because of layoffs or whatever, however you want to call that. I get back to my hall and I have to sit in my seat and watch people get up on the platform and talk about Bethel being the example for the whole organization. We want to emulate Bethel as closely as possible, is what I'm hearing when I go back to the congregation and I'm in my seat and I'm looking and I'm thinking, this person either doesn't know anything about Bethel, or he does know and he's deliberately lying to people. Bethel's not the example for the whole organization, because the organization is about its own benefit. Everything it does is about its own benefit. You don't have a single charity. You don't have a single dime being spent on a school or anything. It's all about its own benefit. And the people there, a lot of them, are not spiritual at all. At all. You guys comment down below. Let me know what you think. Did you think that Bethel were primarily spiritual people? And this is ex-Bethelite signing out.